Michael's coming. He called me. He said he was coming. So, Ken's
Oh, Ken is, I think he's having cold.
oh, really?
Yeah, it's this season, just a lot of people are getting a cough, cold, but not that they don't have fever, but a lot of people are not very well
Okay.
at my workplace.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm so far, that's okay.
Where's Alon? Is he
He's in France right now.
in France?
Yeah.
Okay.
In France.
Oh.
看见什么的，
比如啊，
我的生意出什么，上个团结什么的。三界觉当作业觉当罗，家觉不多当内就是大概具体级别做那么些，罗了边界的三界不把那个。三界觉当作业觉当罗，家觉不多当内就是。大概具体级别做那么些，罗了边界的三界不把那个。三界觉当作业觉当罗，家觉不多当内就是。大概具体级别做那么些，罗了边界的三界不把那个。哎呀。然后就开始，罗他就说我唱起了，对，昨天打约了说送我家子，对，就是送什么节，他在里上头学的，对了，吕宋刚写呢，那帮人就帮我带些，带成你的嘞，他的那么几个写吧，吕当，让了往一个吕节，那俺节给他。大概略当老觉当，少大概说个略当老觉当，那给咱说的当王送王大把别王，我得过的一句，那跟着略送王看的嘞，略当王过的送什么节，那些个老觉当王过的，奴隶就送什么节，给咱当王过的奴隶就送什么节，但第一呢，略送王过的当王过的。绕着学的就可以，他的呢送完的嘞，当送大百姓能送完的，送完呢当个绿送完是，他绿送完或者开始光的，你要定出的，老是送什么节，他在里面基本喜欢的，机械能够做的，这样，机械我从的什么搞的点过呢？在那绿送刚写那是吧？在那绿送刚写那是，他绿送完的看着就是是吧？那才的，他们基本些呢，绿送完的看着就是。可是我说绿送下的，绕上去呢，就把这绿当对了嘛，不就把多，反正俺这里送嘛是，绿的吧就在那里，就俺就买嘛，所以说我那把绿当下给就是人嘛去，反正买那就把多，反正俺就买嘛，就绿也不就送过来也是，对嘞，现在他们基本上都。在那绿松刚写那是绿松嘛，这个干的简单不嘞，嘛基本上呢，那边就要帮我的是，真的绿松这个干的就是呢，那那边就要忙不嘞，那边就要热，他说呢帮我就是个嘞是的，是的你的定，那边在那绿松刚的那边就要帮我的是，我等你过的嘛，这里你去学都是。
So previously we talked about giving our all sentient beings your body, your position, your good gains and past, present, and the future, and protecting and purifying and enhancing this. And so we have talked about this, in verse beginning from the verse 4 to all the way to verse 6, protect, giving one's body position and good gain of 3 times, protecting and purifying and enhancing. So this, during our explanation of those 3 verses, are what we call the brief explanation of giving out one's body position and so forth. But beginning from this verse, the verse that we're currently, which is the verse 7, it also talks about the practice of giving our body and so forth. But in this particular verse, there's elaborate explanation. That is what we call the detailed explanation, or what is meant by protecting one's body and so forth. So now, when we talk about protecting one's body during our previous sessions, and we talked about that we are not. It is not appropriate for us to give away one's body in an inappropriate time. So we have to know that the appropriateness of time uh, and circumstances where we can give away one's body. So therefore, instead of giving away one's body to others, one's body must be protected until the appropriateness of time is come. So so that is what we talked about, uh, during our previous teachings. However, in this teachings, which is here, what is protecting bodies? What is it actually explains what is meant by protecting one's body. That is what it means. It says it is giving away what is harmful. So in this particular verse, that protecting one's body doesn't necessarily means that you are actually protecting from harm and or protecting from some kind of uh, sicknesses and so forth. Rather, in this particular verse, what it says is it is giving up what is harmful. In other words, it's giving up what is harmful actions, bodily actions. That is what is meant by protecting one's body.
There's some of the element, not of course.
Is he lower than the little bit? Does it stand lower? No, it's too long. There you go.
Janada Neban Juro Pamate, Neban Juro Seti, Mobicate, Mobalia, Neban Yuaki, to the Pangres and to some wood. Do that. Taba Jigoshi to be collected as a niece children. And Jiva Chimiki, Lila Neban Jui, Lee, some stew, and then send the pimby, and then I can't never do. Thomas Ajini, Chimil never do so much. Java Chiminki, and then Lulia, never Juaki, the so, Yabushum, yes. The name send the pimby, James about the so, Yabush Dambre, yes. There is a genie.
So this giving away what is harmful is again explained under two sections. In other words, under two outlines. The first outlines is giving away, protecting one's body from, harmful actions of one's, protecting our body, referring to the protecting our body of future life, is to protect our body of future life should be, giving up the actions of harmful actions. So that is what is meant by protecting one's body, which is referring to one's future, the body of future life. And then the next outlines, or the sections that begins with, is relying upon a favorable condition that favors or that actually protect or that favors one's body of this life. Okay.
觉得趁内绿的我做的中产的话，但他绿的了话，他绿的亚波节那样当初样的节奏，那你见什么毛波节我说了，特别见毛波节绿的人都那样的特别见毛波节我说唱过了，加上的绿趁的呀，那你绿的人波那样的偏偏节奏，那你特别见的说亚波节，但我也是呢，他单单我说绿的中产的。다 중창의 류데 는 소소 지정도 초약의 체도 달라 팽비게 된 제상보 제사야 당 동야 고야 당 류절로 소베 간다 류데 야보지 송조지네 엔데 정도 내야 준비 제 먹어 주러 왔다 소도면서 야보 땡을 예스라고
So we must rely on what is meant by relying upon the favorable conditions that sustain one's lifespan of this, in other words, in this life. Is to relying upon a right diet. In other words, having a right diet and maintaining one's body as healthy as possible, and those are what is meant by the favorable condition to sustain one's this life, the body of this life.
就那样的单单绿的有点的，说这个特别建议或者电马西为呢，你前面绿了那边就来所以张不记得为呢，你得到农村中来，别那么做说单单说了呀，人堂那边。弄不起，但他说到老婆里有就接，特别就要不就当嘛些，今天忙不了，俺的人堂有的，那将来要不就用我说什么浪接的那些的，但我们说到老婆里呀，说到么浪接的，忙不用我说啥个，人堂的对比，将来说到老婆有的，特别就当嘛些接，忙不了的用我说什么浪接的就了吧，我等那些，但他说的有的个有的，特别这样我就带你人工出来个，那这样我就买电话接。前面的绿绿了那边就来苏安长他来没得几点得到了嘛，这个单单用餐就单单有点绿的，也那样特别建议过去点，在长度嘛这边前面的绿了那边就那边来点，要不就摸出来就这样，送过来给全部来。
So it talks about the importance of protecting the body of future life as well as the body of this life, because if you think of only protecting the body of future life, then neglecting the body of this life, then it is almost you are unable to. In which case, you are unable to, value the body that you have obtained this life. So therefore, not only that you are putting in effort to protecting the body of future life, but also protecting one's body of this life by relying upon favorable conditions which sustains our present body. So therefore, it is, for example, it says, if you have a valuable object or the valuable things that you possess at this time, and you are not actually using that valuable the position that you have, but you are wishing for future valuable positions without using the valuable position that you have at this time. And so then this is somewhat like that, because you are not using the valuable body that you have right now. And so not only that you're not using, but you are not protecting this valuable body that you have right now. Just if you mere focusing on protecting of your future life, the body of future life alone is not adequate. It is not a right, but we have to protect both the body of this life as well as the future life.
제가 센터 페이지 젠데바데 센터 페이지 젠데바데 지 저주나네 센터 페이지 잠벌 때네 제수 초bat에서도 예스제 탐절이야 펜데 루고 상상이 코너 되지 주나르레 되게 맞죠 있네요 아니 라진니 회기 아니 자와 상보지 루야게 체도 되게 모이제니 아니 센터 페이지 젠데바는 베세지야 어디지 아니 되게 맞죠 있나 다가다 라진니가 피피죠 두마도 있네 내비 자와지 라진니가 내비 자와지 무루사 다 담이 되게 코너 세세미 토네 어느 센터 페이지 젠데가 듣게 친구래 마도 센터 페이지 젠데바 가기라 어느 라진 그런 내비 자와두딩에 되게 중요하나 안에 소소 제나도스 만들어래 주전이 제와이나 아니 뭐 바라니 동해 유명하게 되니 주도 되게 선에 뭐 바라니 동해기 주 어느 단다 당도라는 되는 선이지 찬와 있는데 조금은 지라
By protecting one's body, and here again, motivation is very important. Motivation plays a very critical role in whether one's practice of protecting one's body is corresponds to the teachings of the Dhamma. It is now, if one wishes to protect one's body of this life, just mere having a long life, and in worst case, to engage in actions that are harmful to others, and it is completely wrong, and it is not. You are not protecting your body in accordance with the teachings teachings that are given by the Buddhas and the great Indian masters. So now, what kind of motivation that one must have to protect one's body of this life is just the reason. The motivation must be that. The reason why I want to protect my body and sustain my lifespan by protecting my body is to benefit all other sentient beings. If possible, I will not even spend the time that's something that doesn't become helpful or beneficial for other beings. Whatever I do, every moment, every action that I may take may become beneficial for other beings. If that is not possible, one should at least have a motivation that I will sustain my life by protecting my body so that whatever actions I may take will not become harmful to others and will if possible, it is beneficial for others. If it is not possible, my actions will become my actions will have no harm to other beings. So this is the motivation that you have to have. If possible, I should do something that is helpful for others or beneficial for others. If that is not possible, I will at least refrain from harming other beings. That kind of motivation should be present when it comes to the practice of protecting one's body of this life.
제가 치미 류를 내버려 주기 리수 마선도 뭐 다 치미 류에 되는 것으로 용절해요. 단단 것으로 단단 류에 유시 말에 제가 단단 류에 되다 안에 카트니 아니 제서 제가 치마생이지 내가와 제가 치마생이 때 주로 차상근 돼야지 말에 제산도 대한 점수 신주제나 제가 치마세야 되다 제가 먼저 키는 저게 애는 제가 치마가 내서도 시행 거요래 제가 치마 요당매 요로 요당 간다 임바도 대신주 시비지야 요래 다 넘바이나 남비고 쇼노네 제가 치매 두지르바 뭐 요래 단나 저기 저소나네 제가 맞을 때 되게 누구한테 용고 요래 어디네도 다 제가 치마게 내서도 시험도 알고는 아니 제가 치마 요당매 아니 요당 간다 임바 그래서 더는 신주 시비지야 요로 어디네 지레 제가 다들 이제 제가 치마들다 단단 말도 뭐 별로 단단데 시체비 지레 단단시 단단 데 말도 시체비 지레 아니 제가 신다지 용으로 와 제가 신다지 용에 용비 그런데 제가 신다데 단단 말은 좋다 단단 당 안에 뭐 지원이 바로 리와 가는 요에스 대지 용으로 왔다 리와데 다 남비쇼는 시바이나 안에 시비 있더니 리와 용으로 르도 가가 차는 거요래 단다 르도 또니 메르타게니 되니 사월 배기나 지가 잘 되게는 지지는 거 매버서 하셔고 얘네 들 땜배기 아니 신도 차베기 세데 인도스 준투니마 로고요 제가 대인론에 아니 단다기 지원디게 아니 센트게 준데 아니 저 치미 아니 바게 냐타자 냐타자베 그래 아니 르데 마다 차로 그래데 그 생기 준데 또 나만이 마토스 준로 되면서 아니 저 치마서 좀 강산데 단대 저제 근데시에 뭐 발문 상장이 저들 저 치마스 어두세리 말 제가 아마도 치마님 준로메데 시비드니 샤고를 마도 르라바드니 샤고요 말에 대정해 그래 제가 내인데 다 치미 르라네 버린 주변 예수마서 뭐 발리 단대 유지를 뭐 발리 간다지 용고 여매데 단단히 말은 속에 대 주제 전담 토래 제가 연구하러 제가 단단히 제가 치미기 르라 아니 가르가 넣고 요래 내 가르치는 넣고 요래 내 가르치는 배우고 요래 대모서 시비 토니 제가 치미기 르데 야보지 유학 채로 단단히 아니 tumbil레다 아니 뭐 tum빌레인데 이와 치비 땡니 tum빌레도 뭐 tum빌레데 단단히 무서 방고 요래 제가 내도 제가 치미기 아니 르 따라야 제 내반주의 레카이 맞대 단단히 소소 맞춰봤는데 대주 단단히 방라쳐이 나게 기침을 자고 요래
So when we speak about the future, the body of future body, the life of body of future life, and that body is not present at this time. It is the body that is to become. So we're talking about the body that we will be obtaining in our future life. So, however, when we talk about future life, past life and future life, or the life after death, it's not something that is common. It is not something that is commonly believed by all religious traditions. There are only few of those religious traditions that accepts life after death, including Buddhism and so on. Now, in accordance with the Dharma, when we talk about future life, it is not only just we blindly believe in future life, but rather there are numerous reasonings that establishes the life after death or the future life. So the way in which the Dharma explains about the future life is based on the acceptance of consciousness. It is a continuity of consciousness that transcends from one life to another life and taking a new form of body. And when we are clinically, no longer alive, in other words, has no connection, broken, and it's the conscious already left the body. And that this continuity of consciousness will transcend from this existence to another existence and entering into the mother's womb or whatever form of life that you may have in the future, depending upon what kind of karma that we may accumulate. So you may have in the future, but the continuity of mind or the consciousness is the same. It is a continuity of the consciousness of the past life. And it is based on understanding of how this consciousness transits from one life to another can establish the life of our future life. So therefore, when we talk about protecting the body of future life, is we are engaging in the actions that are negative. And the negative actions, we're engaging in these negative actions at this in our present life, then you are not actually engaging in actions that become a protection or that actually protects one's in the body of future life. Mm-hmm. So what is meant by protecting one's future life, body of future life, is by giving up, by abandoning or refraining from engaging in negative actions, but rather engaging in the positive actions or the virtuous actions, so that will become a favorable condition for one's future body of one's future life. That is what is meant by protecting one's body of future life. So, because whatever the form of body that we may take in the future, it is not something that the form of body can be created by someone, or it is the form of body that you may have in the future. It's just coming into being from nowhere. The form of body that we may take in the future is entirely depends upon what kind of actions that one may take in this life, or what kind of karma that one may accumulate in this life. It is based on the karma that you have accumulated in this life will enable one to have whatever the form of the body that we may have in the future in accordance with one's own karma. So here it says, what we need to do at this point is to whatever we can, whenever we engage in the actions that are beneficial and others that are virtuous, and making sure that one's action is virtuous and beneficial to oneself and that of other beings. And this creates a condition, in other words, this creates a favorable condition for protecting one's body of future life. So therefore, to protect one's body of future life, so we should always engage in the virtuous actions and abandoning the non-virtuous actions.
Nandi Kalea, Nandi Nibi Kalea, Joangache, Sajur De Kalea, and there's a big Tony, Joangache, Della Power, and a Nandi Nalea, Joangachu Duchi, that Dubi Riba, the Duchi Riba, and Nigananda, Joangachu Duchi Ribas, Yawa Jazan, Chibajima, Chibajima, Riba Juji, a Ribanga Motus, the Riba in Bichir, Penata Riba Siesni, Junset in a That in a quiver, young Buchiriba. Take a little 지바 제마타 비르바 주지에서 지바 마이 나니메 제마타 바들레 되잖아 그래. 다 대상나 지금 뭐마 주지도 아니 아니 나리야 보고 가능하면 다섯 개만 그들이 다음인가니면 쳇지 받는 데 자고 그러잖아. 아민가니면 쳇지마 답에게 아니 지바되게 리바테에서 그래 리바서 뭐다 리바로 이치니서도 로들 좀 시바래. 그래서 리바테에서 그래 지방아니면 지마 답에게 아니 리바테에서 그래. 대대 라면은 제마 답에 리바테래. 대내내 리바나마 좀도 요래서 그렇다. 뭐도 요대 유튜브에 리바 이미지를 쓰고 유튜브에 리바 이미지를 쓰고 다들 배가르거나 다들 리바 신에서 다들 리바 신 다나 말로서 리바들이야 대 중앙에 좀도 로고도 와서 어떻게 그러지 되잖아 배는 다들 리바 신에서 다들 리바 대 리바가 뭐게 또 지막이 좀 많이 와서 배타나 시기 아니 지바제마 답이 주고 리바 대야 근데 저랑 뭔가도 요구로 가는 콜을 빠려 와스네. 나한테 주제 되라고 와. 제가 다 되라고 주제 그걸 때는 지바지마 답이 리바데 리방만 뭐도 요나 가디요 그러나 아밍한 치마르테 비무를 아밍한 디비컬이야 리방만도 요고 다야 대는 거. 다 아밍만 요비까게 제가 니위까게 아밍한 요데 지바데 리바데 대방 뭐도 되잖아. 다 대응을 여러 가지 봐 버려. 개념을 줄 빠지. 대야야 좀 대내 줄 봐. 야야 담서고 아니 다 도마 마이는 나사제비 거를 받아 된다. 마이는 나사제비 받아야 리방 뭐도 거를 간에 리바래 와서 그렇게 되더래요. 다들 리방마다 되는데 지방마를 받대 마도 나사요 말. 제가다 지방마를 받대는 아니면 나사자도 왔네. 또 그 내내기 주더냐 되는 거야. 아니 시타보지는 차용을 제가 무슨 또 써서다. 내내기 주세요. 이게 하고 내내기 주다. 다 무중물이 써야지 마셔이나. 배는 것도 라판도시나. 살로가 도도지기 아니 이 모드지 속이나. 모드지 속이나. 살로가 도도지기 모드지 속이나. 때 모데 소비카랴 때 모데게 내내 주도 가르잖아 내내 주데 대조제게 사도도데 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 모드니고 모요 주는 거라 저 내내 주데 되는 거래 모드 조제게 사도도데 그 모드 조샤비카랴 다 모데게 내내 주 가르잖아 그로조사게 주자 사도도데 래 때 내내 주서 거래 다들 조사게 제 라차노가 나 종이 간다도데 아니 레지 제제세가 그래. 레지 지금 주어서 왔다. 제가 내내 주어서도 그 모두 조사가 사도도 샤도와. 그래서 대나시기 단다 모대기 내내 주어도 대조지기 사도도 사도도다 모요 주자라. 모두 조사가 그래 사도도 로스케 하요 말와. 제가 대 내내는 내다는데 대다다 너무 좋게 라바지 문 통하여 봐. 사도 되는 줄 아는 시에와. 다시 봐야 되나 이게 시비가 내내 주더라 아니 시바 그런 야나 그런 거 샵에 봐차 되는 거래 시비 내내나 시바 이미 쳐봐야 말데 시비 내내다가 시바 누요 시비 누요 샵에 봐차지 같으니 가로 거래 마도 시바와 시바 마이비 시바와 시비 샵에 봐차데 셴비 뭐 버지기 시비 내내 지금 제거야 말해 그 tumbi jen chile tumbi dibi jungro mato me tumbi juchile dibi chile chego pe namo so shinga nana ya ni tana ni ji nyugi chegre dwa tana doi nyugi chegre mato ni ji sabe tani doi nyugi chego mando doi sabe tani ni nyugi chego mando chela kaya tako tumbi juchile teni dibi de tana tumbi chegre mata chege ane karisa gore ji pe namo so 매일 보고 미 보고 찍어도 마도 현재 찍으면 와 체체 찍어도 와 되나지 그 그러고 지 유튜브에 디비디 찍어요 되나지 시비기 내내다 시비집에 바샤가 내는 집을 때는 디비디 그 시바이 찍어요 그래서 시비 내내나 아니 시바와 시비집에 바샤 되는지 마도 현장에서 요 말 Today, non-degree, but they can be the mountain. So they were in your dad, so and the Joe mentioned in the US as on the door. The Rolos is sort of a child that which is it.
So when we speak about consciousness, of course, there are many subtleties of consciousness. And the detailed explanations of the subtleties of the consciousness can be found in Siksa Samuccaya teachings or the Tantric teachings, and particularly the High Yoga Tantra, the teachings of High Yoga Tantra, in the section of completion stage. You will find those continuity of the consciousness and subtleties of the consciousness. So there are numerous subtleties or differences of consciousness, different consciousness, and the detailed explanation and the precise and very detailed explanation can be found in the completion stage, the teachings of the completion stage. But nevertheless, we'll also find this consciousness, the explanation of consciousness also in Sutrayana, in the Sutrayana. Although you may not find the very subtle, explanations or the precise and detailed explanations will not be able to find in the Sutrayana system as we find in the Tantric system. But there is a quite an extensive explanation can be found in the Sutra system as well. For instance, if you look at the Dharmakritis, the second chapter of epistemology, where it all, chapters after chapters of establishing the reasonings of having a future life, and where it explains all kind of consciousness, how the first consciousness that continues to the consciousness of next, first moment of the consciousness continues to the next moment of consciousness, and third, fourth, and so on. So those are very helpful if one has the time. If you look at those, the teachings will be very, very beneficial and very helpful to understand how the consciousness travels from one life to another life. So one example that I could share here, according to the Dharmakriti, where he stated that the consciousness of the newly born baby's consciousness of newly born baby, it's not something that is coming into from nowhere, but that very consciousness possessed by the newly born baby's consciousness is coming from the consciousness of previous life, or it's a previous consciousness. If we were to trace those consciousness from one to another, then it will always ultimately we will trace all the way back to the consciousness of our previous life. So this is how you will find a very marvelous, teachings and the reasonings that is written by the great Indian master Dharmakriti. So here, if we can take another example here, is say that the consciousness that the very consciousness that enters into the mother's womb has its own causes and conditions, particularly its own substantial cause, in other words, not just other cause, other causes, but we're talking about the substantial cause. The substantial cause of that part, the consciousness that enters to the mother's womb, is its own previous consciousness. And if you were to trace again that previous consciousness, we will ultimately trace back to the consciousness of previous life, because there is no other causes. There's no other any other things can become a cause for our consciousness. The cause of consciousness must be the consciousness of previous consciousness. Substantial cause. Here now we have to differentiate between the substantial cause and cause. If something that is caused, that doesn't necessarily mean a substantial cause of some certain product. For instance, the cup that I have in front of myself. If the cup is made out of a mud or ceramic, you could say the ceramic is the substantial cause of this cup, or cause of this cup. But there are many other causes. Who made this cup, the person who made this cup, also cause of this cup. And they have used all kinds of tools and equipment to make this, cup. All of those are causes, but they are not substantial causes. So that is difference between the causes and substantial causes. So therefore, the consciousness, the cause of consciousness can only either be a propensity or the imprints, or the consciousness itself, the consciousness of previous life, or consciousness of previous consciousness. Other than these two, other than the potency or the propensities or the imprints or the previous consciousness, there's no other causes. There's no other substantial cause for the consciousness. So therefore, if you were to think about this, the very consciousness that we have at this time, we all possess this consciousness. And its consciousness, very, very present, the very consciousness that we have right now, it's actually the continuity from your previous consciousness. And that previous consciousness is not something that consciousness coming into being from nowhere, but it also has its own, substantial causes. So if we were to trace again here, all the way back, ultimately you will be tracing back to the consciousness of your previous life. So therefore, our very understanding of life after death is not something that blindly explained or blindly believing, but rather there are many reasons. It requires a lot of thought processes. We need to think of that. Whether it's the very, according to the Dharma or Buddha Dharma, our very, acceptance of our life after death is based on continuity of consciousness. Based on understanding of consciousness, we then believe or we, accept, future life, the life after death, or the future life or previous life, and so on.
Pomaina running poverty magic lendiova. The nature talk over it. Nene Pami Namboji Vicania and Nane Jumaba over it. Pomanijaki Nadia Jumaba. And then Khan Nando Papa. Khan Rabalas over the Dagi Gajata Tower. But the legend over it. That the legend charges someone and then go charging by your na, thinking by Mandua, Jazan, Serio Tanina Shinjuji, Jamava Toma Kashila, Pogo Mashang Mambu, Yundegadua. Just that tell ya, Jen Karji, Jen Toba Karji, or that Nahite, Zutuar Jazan, Rani Pat Pugute Pachiak, Lendi Yoba, Machiak Lendi Yoba. Nani Jamaba, Kanando Baba, Kanrabalas of Maiba, The Naju, you are Tana Po Chaming, if I mean that the chance somebody carbona, and the Shuek, Nahit, or Jazam. Come, Kamani, Devatele, Nahit, Shuyum Bicale, and go Chia Sonja the Q Bicale, and the Dividend me. Just did Pamina Jim Batan, the Daggy Jan Sobatana, to Chavamandos. That is just somebody carries one, then I was not sure the Shediak, Chivamami Nashite, and then Sajang Namashi passing a Namish on the Shediak, the David, and the mirrors and Tildora on the Gata, you did it. Nina, or you will teach.
So now to half of the life, the future life, has a lot of different kinds of causes and conditions. The first causes condition we can think about to have parents to whom that you have karmic connections, so that you are free to enter yourself into the womb of that mother, to take a rebirth of human beings. In other words, take a example of taking a rebirth of human beings. So just combination of the substances of the father and mother. In the Dharma terminologies, we have what we call the white drop, the male's white drop and the female's red drop, which is referring to the substances of the father and mother. Just mere combining these two alone is not guaranteed for a human life, right? Even though there's no problem with the mother's womb, the father's substances or mother's substances have no problem at all. It's all clear. But there is no guarantee that they can have a baby. What that entails, in accordance with the Buddha Dharma, according to Dharma, there needs to be another condition, which is consciousness. The consciousness needs to be entered into this combination of those red and white drop to form a life in the mother's womb. So without consciousness, of course, now it is pretty common that even in the physicians will, examine very carefully, and they find there's no problem with both father and mother, but they're still not unable to have a baby. There are many examples of that. Mm-hmm. But why they are not having this baby is an open question. There's no answer to that. So the scientists had no answer to that. We don't know if there's no problem with you guys, but you're not having baby. But according to Dharma is because although that the both substances are very clear, free from any defects, it's completely pure. But then there needs to be a consciousness that can enter into those two drops to form a life within the womb of mother. So this is how the Buddha Dharma actually explains, and the life after death, entering this consciousness into the mother's womb, into the combination of substance of the father, male and female, within the mother's womb to form a life.
And then you do, and then Pami Koran Dubar, Nahita and Sanjani, the Nachayo Bikoria, Kankabi, then New Bodabada, Jibage, Luginene, Chitungi Chashi, Jiggy, and Lugit, about the Kanas of the Sotos, Nenechini, Chayua. And then my come over the Nanda, nene go to te 되게 ane lyoge tene chadang ane shala soba to soga nene chini to se tang mozo lyoge tene chini chunga rwa tene yindu ta tene chung tsabi jile ya mozo tende lyo tene da nambu hiba sete tene tendu yore tente me dewa chadu yore tene yindu da tente me dewa chadang de pena rapa noji pesha na mozo sanga tanya ju loyo li chaya ki to rapa noji pesha na mozo lo li pesha na peya boye luji tondu ta pere jiba jishin dhugi me da 당도 로이나 로타지 로노가 타파지 당 무바라 발샤 고다 로타지 고래 로타데 니모레 로가 니티 몰레데 고래 근데 데 로타다 로가 세모가 시도니 요 장로 바그만도 다 델이야 롱이 로지 고로 제가 당도 류제 뭐나 레바 상상마요 제가 저데 로타서들이 로타서들이 다가 힘이 댄사가 싫어 댄사가 싫어 다다 로타주로 되나게 다 로타도 주니 로타도 레이고 그러네 시도도 레이고 건 바이고도 왜 투용도 되나 이게 아니 레바도 로타서들이 제 레바도 류도 로타서들이 로타서 이제 안 되면 히바도 로나 이제 어때네로 이제 댄데서 되고 제가 당도 다다는 뼈 로타를 버지 자는 제가 대산티니 중화식 레벨 주니 마도라다라 방고 있더니 그 롱당 된다게 레벨 주니 모습 가봐서 나가 가봐서 레벨 주니 로고요 봐. 봐. 어때네도 거 간다 주나지 거걸 주나지 매발은 가지는 로고요 말이. 대나시 그 주나지 토니 아니 한번에 로사 진도 있는 리자르트도 바나니 마토스 레벨 주니 요되게 진도 저도 거에 주나지 토니 마주니 용도 대나시 시바생의 때 댄사게 시드네 줄 때네 어느 것도 류거를 맞췄니 대대하지 근데 대니들 뒤나식 세례는 양고 로드 댄사게 로사도 치스나 로사도 트론드는 때 로드 또 유튜브는 대나지게 시비 댄사게 류 트론드나 아니 트론드도 류 때문에 시바데 때문에 네트워크도 어디네 담에다만 치들서 보네요 대니들 뒤와 챙겨야지 안 보여 수차비가 대니들 뒤와 또 수차 아니 그 세를 제 되게 내가 소야게 뒤로 전에 그래야 되는 데 와서 쳐요. 아니 지금 배 가라도 되는 지 한 주인만 그래. 어떻게 이사래?
So here now, the father's, the male, white drop and the female's red drop will become a substantial cause for the forming of the body of the individual, the body of the human beings. Or not only human beings we're talking about also, but we're just in this context we're talking about the human life. So it says, according to Dharma, it says the father's white drop will become a substantial cause for bones and marrows and so on. And the mother's red drop will become a substantial cause for one's, blood and flesh and so on. So now then the consciousness is entered into it, and then this body, and the consciousness are then dependent upon each other. There's a strong connection between consciousness and the body. So here, just mere having those two substances that we talked about earlier alone will not become cannot form a life. It alone cannot form a life. In order to form a life, there need to be consciousness that enters into it. So Gishla is, giving a rough example of that. To electricity, when we need to switch on the electricity and switch on the light, we have to have a bulb, isn't it? Just having wire outlets and everything will not give us a light. In order to have a light, we have to, fix the bulb, and then it needs to be switched on. So then we will have a light. So here, the wires and whatever the radiations or the wire and everything can be which is analogous to the body of human being, in other words. And the consciousness can be analogous to the bulb. If the bulb is removed, then light is gone. So similarly, when someone dies, then consciousness departs from that body, and the person will be no longer alive. And then consciousness will not again, it will disappear. It will just keep traveling, transiting from one to another, forced by their own karma and so on, so that consciousness can find another life, the body of the future life. So, so this is, how the Buddhists accepts, life after death, based on understanding of the continuity of our consciousness. Any questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I brought watermelon. Does anybody want watermelon?
Good. The watermelon, the tarpuja is shaking basic.
The Dharma of the watermelon. It's round, it's circular, complete. What?
Yeah.
Yes. Please. So my question is, does he enjoy watermelon?
Watermelon, new way basic.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
There's an inquiry about, it's the subtle distinction. I'm inquiring about the subtle distinction of the consciousness that when it departs from, as in Dharma Kirti, when it departs from the body, it really doesn't have any personal selfhood to it at all. It's almost like it's like some kind of energy force that's selfless. It's like a selfless life force. And that selfless life force then becomes another life, but without, it has the karmic imprints and the propensities, but it doesn't have like any sign of the identity of that being, that of name or the lifetime that they have lived. It's almost like it seems like there's like if you work on selflessness, it's sort of like an understanding that this life going to another life, that there's no clinging to some kind of selfness at all. It's so the subtlety is, I think the subtlety is maybe in the mind only and the prasangika of Madhya, because it seems like there's a subtle difference of how the mind only explains consciousness and the prasangika Madhyamikas, how they explain the subtleties of the consciousness. So I guess the inquiry is what's this subtle force or energy that the consciousness is, if it doesn't have any real identity, then even in this lifetime, then in the next lifetime it still has the power to have another life, but not with any association except for its karmic influences. But that is it. There's no self reference in that either. this is my understanding. It seems like this is a question that I've had with one of my really good friends who's a philosopher major. He asked me the question, what happens to the self when the self dies? Or is there, but he has this reference to himself as being some significant, substantial, and ultimately there isn't any substantial, selfness. So, I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's. Okay.
I kind of, caught
Yeah,
your
thank
question.
you,
So
thank you.
그래서 이제 지난 된다 남시 대단이야 남시 차라리 대단이야 이 두다 수수의 개발의 인도 속도 어떤 지대리셔 근데 남대기 되게 선자배 그 두다 시사 지제 이제 우모하게 나려요 남시 차라리 좀 마음으로 얘기했어 그러나 하나님 바라리야 군인 바라리야 말에 개발에 여러 가지 직대리셔 이제 마음씨를 그런지 성찰을 하셔야 되는데 제대로 가서다 빼는 남지스리가야 그 가다간다 미치과 시사를 제리야 그 강사 대를 때문에 세 지지다 그 다세지 버버스 디고 디기다 모데 맵 잡으러 왔다지 이 차례 아니 딱고 줘야 되고 카스트 가서 그게 남식 코너 제가 심어 줘야 되다 간다 딱 와도면 간다 남식 코너랑 두고 남식에 그 소리 그 소매 차대 왔어 이제 콜 남식 될 때에 맞이 요만 있어요 그 갑자기 된다 필요하잖아
아주 여러 말세더라.
다 셀프 쓰고 다 쓰는다 지금 요만 있어 이 여배는 남시랑 되게 그랬어 다 된다 필요하잖아
아무데 나이 차라 데 에네 세상마다 엄마도 그렇지 말이더라. 단다 모두 지원은 좀 부지를 봐. 그베까지 나이 차라 이와게 시고요 말에 단주로 나이다. 되네 세상마다 너네가 저라마 되네 나이 차라 그 저당으로 리파스에 지 단주 거니네 키는데 그러봐. 세상베까지네 키는데 그러봐. 단나긴 너네가 저라마 참하게 요 토마토 키는데 리파스에 저러봐. 근데 저도지 그거를 마도 그다 가르모진 반주니 아니 차라리 이제 시고요 말해서.
So here now, when we talk about consciousness, we're not talking about consciousness, the particular consciousness that is, performed by one particular, philosophical tenets or the philosophical, thoughts. So rather here, when we talk about consciousness, is that the general consciousness that is accepted by all tenets, including Vaibhashika, and Chittamatra, Madhyamaka, and Sutantika. So all of this, there's a one common consciousness that is accepted by all of them. That is what we're having. There's no distinction. We're not making any distinction over here when we talk about consciousness of the life of, continuity of our consciousness.
되나지게 집에 제마타비 리파다 나르는 시대 집에 제마타비 리파데 마게 우리 집안에네 대시바라 바래스 이네 단다 나르 그런 걸 시바 타라게 시고 말지도 바지도 그래 시바 타라게 시고 말 이네 대가만 시고 이제다 집안에네 시바라 바본다 그래서
So now, if we talk about the consciousness possessed by newly born that we talked about earlier, newly born baby, the newborn baby. that particular consciousness possessed by this baby is the gross consciousness in accordance with the Vajrayana system. Gross consciousness.
Gross,
Yeah,
I thought
gross
you said
consciousness.
gross.
Gross, yeah.
dan niwe de shiba ma ju ju de da be ma yu de be de ra
No.
de da da jiwa nga ma ni chima ma ju ro nge de kara sa re ripa de na hi de ne da na hi de nga kar sa ta de ju yore ane do jog ta sa ta de ju yore do jog ta sa ta ne shiwa de shiba thara de ke che do ma re da ko do shiba jiwa nga ma ni chima ro nge shiba ji yus ni de na de ji ma do he de ra pa re thamo re se ke shi go ya ma re se ka ji de kar ji na.
So now let's talk about the consciousness that continued continues from continuity of consciousness, sorry, the continuity of the consciousness from previous life that goes to the future life, right? The next life. According to Sutra, it doesn't talk of any subtlety of that consciousness. It's just consciousness that travels from one life to another life. Yeah.
Dan de shiba de nga kar da sha sa ba shi yong de nga kar kar shi na chika la mo ge dan de rin de de mi chika la mo ge se de se thamo yin so chi se thamo se de thamo yin so de lu de da de bi du chi ni pa do ba da ane lo ra pa chan re so ra pa na le da nga kar shi wa na ane lu do ge ni to se de lu do ge ni to ba se de na che to so de cha dang kun do je ju li tu ni 나주 도선데 참어래데 저 치치세 참어데 뒤니 도서라 버려 강다자 니 도와서 차는 상보 마크니 신로이나 아니 세라파데 예샤.
So, however, in accordance with the Vajrayana system, then the consciousness that's the last stage of consciousness that possessed by the individual who's about to die. And that's what you call this Siksa Samuccaya, which is the last stage of consciousness, the subtlemost consciousness. So in accordance with the Vajrayana system, and that is a subtlety. The most subtlemost consciousness.
That's the last.
Yeah, that's the last moment of consciousness of the person who's about to die. And then, as soon as this consciousness, enters into a body, then that consciousness, the very subtle consciousness, that can become a gross consciousness. It has become gross. However, it is not as gross as we think, because it's also pretty subtle, but according to the last stage of consciousness of the individual, the previous individual is about to die.
Yes.
It's gross consciousness.
Because it's more.
It is
more gross. Than
It is
subtle.
gross, yeah, because this is now it's because this consciousness itself coming into being by going through the reversal order of the dissolution, right? Such as reversal order of the dissolutions, and because once the reversal order of dissolutions are happened, and then consciousness that produced by the resolution orders that are reversal orders will become the gross level of consciousness. Yeah, because it goes through all this white appearance, red increasing, black near attainment, and clear, right? So it's
근데 다 체세토만 것은 가나 들 때비 다주로 어떤 메인은 메인사 들이 다주로 체세토만 니사전에 바도 제대로 그런 바도 찬으로 되게 가는 거 바도 저선 바도 가사지도 근데 바도니 체피 그래 다 가르쳐 알려기나 야 제네 질레로 그러와 어디 전에도 차는 거래. 근데 근데 시바도 다기 지냈더라. 근데 가리는 다 줘요 그래. 그는 뭐서 첸디 치가 지겠다. 지원님이 치가 지겠다. 지원 주민 치가 지겠다 그러와. 말한 소리네. 단대 지원디 치가 지겠다 가는 남미 있어 그러나 미 있어 그러와. 지원남아 수술 해주려는 지원남이 치가 지겠다 줘요. 다 뭐뭐 라니 가를 지게 들을 지게나 들을 지게 지다 줘요 그러와. 이 힘이 좀 지르대. 그 르기 때문에 지도나 이게 다다다 다기 때문에 잘. 다기 때문에 그래. 당나 메이 살거나 사이 살거나 들이 살지. 차로 뭐도 그 다사게 이제 힘이 준 여들.
So where there's a consciousness, there's always a self. Subtlety of self. The self. Yeah, subtle self. Self is always there. So we are not talking about intrinsic self.
Or extra.
We're not talking about independent self, but there's a self. Always. Self being human being, self being animal, self being biological being. For instance, if one is about to die,
Mm-hmm.
there's a very subtle consciousness at the last stage of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a self of human beings there. In other words, at the last stage of consciousness, as soon as it departs,
Mm-hmm.
then it takes a rebirth simultaneously into the particle, and there's a part of the self of purpose there again. There's a one, person. The person that is a part of being is there. So long as there's a part of being, there's a self again. The part of self is there, and then the part of self goes through this transition and then taking a rebirth, entering into the mother's womb, whether it's a human being or animals or whatever, forms a self. There's a self. So there's always a self, following the consciousness. It is self is always there, but then again, we should not misunderstood by thinking about the object, the negation of self. We're not. It's something that what we're negating the self. We're not actually negating the existence of the self.
No.
Not at all. We're negating the self, independent self. That is what we're independent self is being negated.
Yes.
That is the object of negation.
Right.
So that's what it is. Okay, you have some questions?
I'm just trying to follow this, okay? So in a previous conversation, so you're going through the stages of death regardless, okay? And then you pass. And what I remember was, it wasn't, you're talking about it was the essence of life. And I think that's the word, rather, there was no self, no.
There's always a self.
Right,
Self
but
is always
it's
there.
the essence itself. It gets to that final point where it transfers, just the essence, none of the ego and
No, those are always different, because when we talk about ego self, it's completely wrong consciousness. It's a
Right.
wrong thought.
right,
Well, our ego is clinging on to something that doesn't exist at all. So this is
Right.
not there.
right.
So there is a self, as long as there is a consciousness,
The
there's
essence.
always there's always a self.
If
Yeah,
everything
that's
goes away, there's something left, that
That's right,
essence
that's
of
right.
being. Okay,
Right.
okay. I was just trying to put the
Yeah.
word to your conversation, so it's an agreement. Thank you.
So what you just said, could I rephrase it
Yes,
as being as an interdependent being or interdependent force of life, or whatever you want to call it, a self, you can call it a self, but there's some interdependentness that is the continuum of it. It's almost like a safety net in a way. It never has gone away.
It's a continuity.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
I think of the word Rigpa, of the dropping of the most subtlest self. drop the most subtlest independent self, and so what's left over, there's really nothing left over, because the ego's already gone. So, but I guess what's remaining would be some subtle imprints from the accumulation of previous life that take you to your next destination, whatever those consequences play out to be.
근데 다디 딱한다 강사스네 다 근데 고 교회를 대님들 고 다지 연구로 왔습니다네. 이 다디 남시 교회 난신시제 다디 교회 독신 중고로 왔어. 거기에서 남시 될 때에 다시 여러 이 교회 남시 교회 단지 교황함에 남시 교회 침을 들어보나 이제 다이 교회에 따라 두고 교회만 실제지. 그때죠.
레다 텐치니 고 다스니 다사게 다기 주로 다기 디주마 존로나 유트라데 다디 주마 존로라 그죠.
So whenever there is consciousness, there is a basis of the consciousness.
There's a ground.
Yeah, there's a ground of the consciousness. And as the consciousness continues, and the basis of consciousness continues, so that's the basis should be recognized as a self or I.
When you say basis,
이네 가정 다리 다디 있으라고 말하고 주로는 그죠.
That is just a continuity. We're not talking about the essence, self or I is to this self. We're not talking about
Yeah.
it's like the foundation of consciousness. When you say the basis of consciousness, you're saying the foundation when everything else.
So what's the difference
Primordial.
between foundation and basis?
Like the primordial of subconscious or unconsciousness.
Not primordial consciousness. No. It's
So, okay.
yeah. 근데 다시를 가르쳐버렸어요.
Oh, I see.
다시를 아와지 삭선.
음.
다시를 가르쳐버렸어.
다이데 난
다시를 다시 시작버렸어. 다시.
다이데 나히트 샤바 나히트 샤바 제가 로그 다스 자자데 다스 이제든 남이 버터만 샤바
그래서
다내 모두이나 pomama 가는 데 답이 나 다이데 pom보도 여러 pom마자 여러 이나다 내 류트 돌니 나히 지고 마 준로야 저러 데그 다이데 나히 들어 샤바
So the basis or the foundation that it's more understood, it's more comprehensible than I would say, foundation would be the consciousness, basic consciousness. There's no other than consciousness involved in that.
I guess my point about foundation as over basic, foundation is the different pieces that go together. And I guess basic would just be the different pieces. It was just, I was getting stumbled by the words, but it's probably the same word.
Yeah, basis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in that we just translate literally from the Tibetan, the original Tibetan.
I see.
It's a she is always a basis. Yeah.
Okay. So it's like if you take, are you saying the basis of human nature,
Or the
the foundation?
mind-body aggregates,
I'm sorry, totally.
mind-body aggregates. The
Okay.
psychophysical aggregates.
You mean if you want to know about the basis of human body or something? Human being?
Well, I'm having.
Tell me, that's okay.
Okay, so, Drew. So Drew was talking about how string theory and Buddhism intersect. So when you're talking about the continuity of life or the transfer of life, in string theory, you can occupy two places at the same time. And so I was thinking about, is it a continuum or are you actually occupying this and as you're occupying this, but you're only aware of time, it might be simultaneously happening. I don't know how to say it.
That's the quantum, you're talking
What?
about quantum.
Yeah.
Quantum, yeah, if you
Quantum.
go beyond quantum and you go to string,
Yeah.
Buddhism all of a sudden it's not, there's math behind it
Uh-huh.
almost. It seems, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's a quite similarities because, but I will out of the slap about that. To consider the this over the benefit ko namshi ki gyundi ma to story kabya namshi korongi tense sai de namshi dagar namshi de dele sembe ta kondaji namshi de tadebe chuchu or vese ko tense and the shiju or wa ko da shiju or wa odi ko namshi koron ra ko kole tadebe namshi de tadebe ni chu shenji mebe na ko 다시 신선을 못해고 그 지강이고 그런 되지 인대를 건데지 고 다시 돼 보러셔야지 근데 다시 될 때문에 최대 고도 시합에는 약간 다시 되게 났어 근데 내
좀 내려질라더라.
그 되듯이 되고 배를 셔도 다 건져는데 뒤에는 배를 셔도
근데 내려지는 줄에. 나히도 다이 야니 들다베 다치지. 그래서 나히 코로 다이지 들다베 다치지. 지금도 다 나히데 야 다이 다질 때 그래서 지금도 대야 유적을 나히데 다데 저런 것도 부모들 때인데 그래. 바돌 전데 바독 때인데 나히데 때인데 그래. 야 지와시면 지와려서 지와되게 나히데 때는 그래. 나히 코로 야 예다질 마디바 거기라 말라. 야 다기 나히 진짜 때문에 다세 지우죠. 대 다기 나히 그러셔. 나히 그러 다지셔니. 때문에 다. 그래서 야
이 남시 단지 뒤다 남시 뒤다 다시 남시 뒤니 타대버
근데 나히 그러 다기 집이 깝지다. 다시 집이 깝지니. 나히도 다슈지 제니. 류도 다기도 제니. 아니 나히도 류도 댄지죠. 다기 생래다 댄사기 댄시 나히 댄사기 품보듯이야. 달은 댄비 댄슈디 나히 그러셔. 봐. 다다는 것도 다세데 다다만 강사스는 다주 다세지요.
강사지 유효가
다데 강사세 다세가 이게 타도를 간다. 주마심 그러요 나히데. 나히데 다이 참.
나버시 공부시하고 말고
부모님들
공부시하고
너희 부모님 너희 바라리다고
나 다가라
바라리 제가 아무도 뭐이는 뭐기 아무도 뭐이 너무 힘을 가가요 다이 저희 가자 안보만 이제 안보 시원 다 이제 안보대 안 이시라고 제가 20kg 돌다 20 준치만 그런 거 다이샤 들었다면 나세 주로 대다시잖아 아, 히바크로 옛날 땡으로 기증한 지금 땡으로 폼볼로 땡으로 그 지역을 간다는 땡으로.
So there's always a causa or person whenever there is a consciousness. You know, when we talk about person, that doesn't mean the person who has body and so forth. There's a seven person. When the consciousness travels from one life to another, whether it's in the further state or some other, you know, wandering somewhere, there always a person along with it. So, for instance, at this time, when we are alive as human beings, our psychophysical aggregates or skandhas are the basis upon which the consciousness is relying on and upon which the consciousness can take place. And similarly, when this psychophysical aggregate is actually, you know, separated or, you know, divorced from our consciousness, then consciousness itself as a basis of the person right there. There's another, there's a, what we call the person, the subtle person, which is will serve as a basis of this consciousness. So this is how it goes. But of course, those are not really something that can be pinpointed and something that can be proved black and white right now. But this is just,
Very good.
this is how, yeah,
Thank you.
we just,
Very, very good.
we really, those are the very subtle, explanations and profound as well. So it's therefore, that's why, we have, when it comes to the life of the dead and acceptance of the life of the dead, there are a lot of debates even within the Buddhist philosophical thoughts, different ways of accepting, and then also many explanations, because the purpose of having all that is it's not that easy to grasp onto it. So they are given all kind of different explanations so that whichever is more suitable for the individual's inclination and their dispositions. So that's why it has a vast subject. What's to learn.
So, years ago.
로이죠.
Oh, years ago. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Bishop.
Jabe Baye Jeda Jemana Godo Zambo Deyan Diji Pada Guji Jizo Dalo Jegiwa Deda Damje Rodo Keson Jibe Jawa Damje Jimawa Kana Chodo Maba Dagi Give Zawa Dibi Jizambo Juji Rodo Mawa Raji Ichi Skarja Kudisis Yeni Çek Yeni Dedim Çat Ya
Oh, that's very, very good. Very clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
도대체 이제는 거
Melon's in the kids. Hey, Pimpa, did you get my phone call? I need the MIA is going to have a purchase of that art that's going to be donated to the MIA from New York. And they need to contact the monks because they work with the monks for the ceremony. So
So you want to
yes. I tried to tell, but we need to, so they need a representative from the monastery to provide contacts and stuff like that for the future. There's going to be a huge, really big.
where is
Minneapolis Institute of Arts wants to contact
and
the monastery about
it?
art coming from New York, that art, big collection, and they want to say prayers and do ceremony. We don't know what those future. Okay, so the communication has to be clean, but it would be really good because I propose, anyway, there's other things in the works, this is just one of them. Okay?
Chanting,
Maybe something, chanting, maybe prayers. Oh, yeah, same. Okay, good. Thank you. So, this is my. We need 2 years.
I'm trying
Hey, come grab this, where do I put this?
I don't know this what it is really. So that's why I'm here. It is automatic. Oh no, this is totally. It happened.
You okay?
No, this is not.
Gonna take it home?
Well, no, I'm gonna go give it to him.
Okay.
Go bash his head. Boom.
You talking to Ken? End stream. Your stream will be viewed. You no longer alive. Press N.
It's okay now.
You can press N. Thanks, Ken.